Greetings, my beautiful lovelies. It's Emmy. How are you? It's great to see you and welcome back. Today, we're going to be making some bread. It's the perfect time to bake bread. It's starting to get a little bit colder, and there's nothing better, in my opinion, than warming up the house with the oven and the smells of freshly baked bread. Love it. So today we're going to be making a bread that's new to me. I just recently learned about it, although it's been around for a little while. It's called Shio pan, and that's the Japanese name for it. Shio means salt, pan means bread, so we're making salt bread. But it's the cutest salt bread I've ever seen. It's rolled up a bit like a croissant, but it's made with a milk bread kind of recipe, so it's slightly sweetened, enriched bread. But Shio, where does the salt come in? It's sprinkled with a bit of salt on top, but there's a bit of butter that's baked into the bread that gives it a buttery richness and flavor. And then there's a liberal coating of salt on the outside. So you get this kind of sweet, buttery, salty thing. And when you squeeze it, it's supposed to kind of crackle. All kinds of things that sound perfect in my category of bread eating, making experience, but I've never had it before. So apparently Shio pan has really taken off in Korea, where it is very, very popular. And today we are going to be making it at home. So let's go ahead and get started. The recipe that I'm going to be adapting today comes from Erin's Cozy Kitchen, and I'll put a link to the original recipe down below. Alrighty, so first thing we're going to need is a stand mixer. And as always, when making bread, you do not need a stand mixer. You could certainly do this by hand on the countertop, kneading it yourself. It's actually a very pleasurable experience in my opinion, but a stand mixer will save you a bit of energy and time. So when it comes to baking, I love measuring with a scale. I find it to be the most precise, and in the end for me, it's very, very easy. So we're going to be using a combination of flours today, mostly bread flour, which will give us a nice chewy texture to our bread, but we're also going to be adding some cake flour, which will kind of soften it and make it a little bit more tender. So in goes the bread flour. And if you've got kids, I have found baking or cooking with kids and using a kitchen scale is delightful. They really enjoy watching the scale and measuring. Super fun. Now we're going to add some cake flour. How much? 120 grams, so far less. Next, we're adding a little bit of sugar, sweeten things up, and some dry milk powder. So the reason why we're adding milk powder is both for flavor and for leavening. It helps to create a taller loaf. And salt. And some instant yeast. Instant yeast is a little bit different than dry active yeast. So if you have dry active yeast, make sure you find out the proper conversion. Now I'm going to whisk this together to make sure all the dry ingredients are well combined. Now we're going to add some icy water, which I found a little bit unusual. Typically recipes call for warm water because that's what yeast likes, but this recipe says to use cold water because we're going to be kneading it for quite a long time in the mixer, and it's going to heat up that way. So we don't want it to get too hot. That's why we're adding it cold. So quite a bit of water. Now we're going to place this in our stand mixer with the dough hook attachment. Okay. We're going to mix this on low until it forms a shaggy dough, and then we're going to increase the speed to medium, add our butter, and then once that's incorporated, we're going to continue kneading it on medium speed for 15 to 18 minutes, or until it passes the window pane test. Okay, lovelies, this machine has been running for a full 15 minutes, and the dough is completely transformed. It's so stinking cool. Every time I make bread, I love the transformation. It's my favorite part. And this is what the dough looks like now. And just as Erin had said, the dough is now warm because of all the friction that was created from the kneading. So that's perfect for our yeast. Now let me just show you what the dough looks like. Just gonna shape this into a tight ball. But look, the window pane test is when you stretch the dough and you can stretch it thin enough that light passes through it. That tells us that enough gluten has developed to create a nice stretchy bread. Great chew. So we pass that test, and if your bread is not elastic enough to create that thin window pane, just keep kneading it longer. So now what we're gonna do is just shape it into a ball. Look how cute it is. It's like a little baby's bum, as they say. It's so smooth and round and tender. So now what I'm doing is just tucking everything under. So we have a nice skin and a nice round ball. So stinking cute. And your little face. Oh, cute. Okay, now I'm gonna place it in the bowl where I mixed everything. Gently place it at the bottom. Boop. Now we're gonna cover this and place it in a warm spot for it to bulk ferment. This one's gonna take us 1 to 2 hours, I'm guessing, depending on the temperature of your space, but we want it to be doubled. So that's the size of it now. Another test is that when you press into it, the hole keeps its shape and it doesn't spring back. Just press a little belly button into it and it holds that belly button shape. Then we know the first round of fermentation is done. So it's pretty chilly in here, so I've got my proofer behind me set at 75 degrees, so it's nice and warm. If you don't have one of those, no problem. You can put it in your oven with a light on. You can also place it in a microwave oven where you've heated a mug of water up first, a minute or so it's nice and steamy and hot. Place this in there. Don't turn on the microwave, but you just want a warm and cozy environment for the yeast to grow. And I will be back when we are ready to shape our dough. Okay, lovelies, see you in a couple hours. Alrighty, lovelies, it's been 2 hours since we let our dough rest, and it is poofed up beautifully. There it is. Now we're gonna take the dough out of the bowl and divide it into roughly 80-gram pieces. Oh, 83, not bad. So I'm gonna shape these into roughly 80-gram pieces, and then we're going to shape them into the beautiful little rolls that they'll become. So we have all of our doughs measured out to be about 80 grams, and now we're going to tighten them up. We're gonna roll these out into little tadpoles. So I'm just gonna keep them kind of log shaped. And we're just gonna let them rest for about 15 minutes, and that will help the gluten kind of relax and it'll make the shaping a little easier. So stretching them out, tucking them under, getting a little tension on them. This also degasses the dough a bit, which means removes some of the carbon dioxide that the yeast has created. So it looks like I'm going to have 12 of these. I'm gonna let these rest, and then I'll come back and do the final shaping before we proof them again. Okay, be back in 15 minutes. Alrighty, lovelies, now we've let our dough rest, and here I've got some butter that I've cut into sticks. Now these are about 15 grams each. And what I did was take a long stick of butter, and what I did was I cut it lengthwise twice and then in half, and that gave me a stick that's about 15 grams in weight and about 2 inches wide. So now that our dough is rested, we're ready to shape them into their final shape. What we're gonna do is take the dough and we're gonna roll it a little bit so that it's pointed on one tip. So it's a little bit like a tadpole. And we're gonna take our rolling pin and roll it out. And then we're going to kind of stretch it too. So we want this end to be a little bit pointier and this end to be a bit wider, a little bit like an isosceles triangle, is what Erin says in her blog notes. Now we take our stick of butter and we're going to wrap it and encase it in the dough. Isn't that lovely? And just roll it up, kind of similar to you would a croissant. Roll, 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 roll. And as we're rolling, you can stretch it a bit, is what I've been told. I've never made these before, so this is my first time. But we want this nice little spiral. Not bad. So now we're going to place it seam side down. This we're going to place on the bottom, and we're going to place it on an ungreased, unlined baking pan. Like this. And we're gonna let this proof for about 45 minutes or an hour or so, or until they puff up nicely. And when you press on it, it kind of dents in but doesn't bounce back. And then we're going to preheat our oven to 400 degrees. Once that reaches 400 degrees, we're gonna drop it down to 400 degrees and bake these for 12 minutes. But before we do that, we're gonna spritz them with a bit of water, and that will help them steam and puff nice and big, and then sprinkle a little bit of flaky salt on top. Erin says pretzel salt. I don't have pretzel salt. I'm just going to use some big flaky salt, Malden salt that I've got. And we'll sprinkle that on top. That'll be the Shio part of the bread. And then after they come out of the oven, we're going to take a pastry brush and brush that extra bit of melted butter on top of the rolls. Take them out, and then we're going to give them a taste. I cannot wait. Alrighty, lovelies, I'll see you after these have baked. Look how cute they look already. Alright, my lovelies, I am back with my baked Shio panes, and they are so stinking cute. Look at the salt breads. I did have to bake them a few minutes longer. The instructions said 12 minutes. Mine would be more like 15 to make sure they got this nice golden brown color. And the recipe did not say anything about brushing the butter on the tops of the buns, but in the video I noticed that that was the case. So I did brush them with the excess butter that kind of exuded out of the buns, and then a couple I left unbuttered just to see if that made any difference with the texture. They smell magnificent, buttery, baked goodness, and they're so stinking cute. Look at them. So cute. So they look like on the bottom. And in the video that I saw, they're supposed to sound crunchy. I don't know if they're going to be crunchy. Maybe? The butter is supposed to kind of fry them up. In another video I saw, they just kind of squish them and make them crackle, which seems a rough thing to do to a piece of bread, but it's one of the reasons why I wanted to make it, because I wanted to see if the bread actually did that. So I guess I'm gonna try it. Let's cut one and see what it looks like inside. That's what it looks like inside. Looks like bread. Alrighty, my first taste of Shio pan, homemade. Itadakimasu. That's delicious. Look on the inside. It's hollow where the butter was. It's salty. The bottom is a little bit crispy because it kind of fried up in that melting butter. The bread is plush yet chewy. There's a nice saltiness that happens because we added big flakes of salt to the top, which goes so nicely with the butter. But not as crispy as I wanted it to be. I was hoping it'd be really crispy, you know? And when I squish it, it's not too crispy. Let's try the one that I didn't put any butter on top. I'm squishing it like they squished in the video. And it is squishable, but it's not really crispy. Look at that. Oh my gosh. Yum. It's delicious. It's like a very decadent dinner roll. Kind of like a Parker House roll. Fluffy, yet chewy. Just not quite the crispy texture I was hoping for. Since this is the first time I've made this bread, I'm not exactly sure why it's not as crisp as what was shown in the video. And it's interesting because they look like pastries. I imagine them to be sweet, but it's definitely not sweet. Terrific. So there you have it, homemade Shio pan. Absolutely delicious and so very stinking cute. I think these would be so stinking cute for the holidays. For your holiday table, adorable. Alrighty, my lovelies. Thanks as always for watching. I hope you enjoyed that one. I hope you learned something. Please share this video with your friends. Follow me on social media. Like this video. Subscribe. And I shall see you in the next one. Toodaloo. Take care. Bye. I just want to stick some chocolate in it though because of this little twisted shape. I'm like, where's my croissant?